down that law. This is the lowest level, rational basis scrutiny. All other laws not catered for in the above two reasons of scrutiny will be under this rational basis. And it is a very easy test to pass, and actually the onus is almost placed on the plaintiffs to show it is not, that the discrimination is not rationally related to any legitimate state interest. And therefore, as long as the state can show some relationship between the discrimination and state interest, the plaintiffs will fail. Okay, so far, does anyone have any questions on the three levels?
Which is higher?
The highest is strict scrutiny, followed by heightened scrutiny and rational basis scrutiny. So as you go through the case, you will see how these levels have an effect on the final outcome of the case. Okay, rational. So majority judges. Okay, the majority judges in this case decided that domestic relations not only required rational basis scrutiny, even under due process clause and equal protection clause reviews. And based on that level of scrutiny, the domestic relations law passed the test and was not unconstitutional. Alright, of the four majority judges, this was the one who gave a considered opinion, Justice R.S. Smith. And what he did was what his judge did was to go and review each clause under the different levels of scrutiny. Now, the domestic process clause, which is the fundamental rights clause, the question to be answered in that review was, what is the right at issue? Is it the right to marry someone? Is it the right to marry or the right to marry someone of the same sex? Alright, so the judge in that case decided that the right to marry someone of the same sex is not a fundamental right. He was of the view that the right to marry traditionally meant to marry someone of the opposite sex, and that is a fundamental right, and therefore this is not something that is to be protected. So he went through the reasoning to say that this was not, he defined fundamental right as one that is deeply rooted in nation's history and tradition, and his right to marry someone of the same sex was not deeply rooted. It was not a fundamental right, and strict scrutiny does not apply. Okay, what he did was he passed through heightened scrutiny, because under the equal protection review, right, once something is not a fundamental right, there's no question of equal protection. It's whether the right is fundamental or not, then it goes straight down to rational basis scrutiny. And he said that it passed under rational basis scrutiny, and he said that the law does not discriminate on the ground of gender at all. He then went to explain. And he now went to explain why the law passed rational basis scrutiny. And he gave two reasons. Alright, you can give me your comments on these reasons after the talk. Now, one is that he says it is important for the welfare of children to promote stability to procreative relationships, which opposite-sex relationships are and same-sex relationships are not. So what he is saying is that a legitimate government interest in encouraging opposite-sex marriages is to encourage opposite-sex couples to have a conducive environment to bring up children. He actually said that relations between opposite couples were temporary and casual, and therefore required protection. And same-sex relations with children are not so casual, and therefore didn't require state protection. This is the other reason that he gave, without any basis of research or sources. He just said, intuition and experience suggest that the child benefits from having before his or her eyes everyday living models of what a girl, a man, and a woman are like. He agreed that there may be exceptions to the rule, but he said that it is rational for the legislation to hold that this is the preferred family model. He then went on to equal protection review, which is equal protection. And the question is, was there discrimination of a class by this domestic relations law? Now, in this case, again, the degree of scrutiny was a rational basis scrutiny only, because it was not those two. It was definitely not a question of race or national origin. Now, the question was actually whether it's based on heightened scrutiny or rational basis scrutiny. And they said, according to Smith, he said that there is no question of heightened scrutiny because Okay, basically what he said was that there's no discrimination because everybody was entitled to marry someone of the opposite sex. And therefore, because everybody was entitled to marry someone of the opposite sex and no one was entitled to marry someone of the same sex, there is no discrimination. And therefore, only rational basis is allowed. Only rational basis review is required. Now, moving on to the next judge, which is Justice Garfield, who concurred with Justice Smith. He also agreed that under both due process and equal protection, only rational basis scrutiny is required. And what happened was the plaintiffs brought up the history of how the anti-miscegenation laws, which was the law prohibiting whites from marrying non-white, was struck down. He said that the reasons for striking that down is different from the reasons here, and therefore they should be distinguished. Now he went on to review first the laws under due process review. So due process review protected life, liberty, and property. Again, the question is what liberty is fundamental? The liberty to marry anyone or liberty to marry someone of the opposite sex or someone of the same sex? So Justice Garfield defined the fundamental right as a right only to marry someone of the opposite sex. The right to marry someone of the same sex is not fundamental right, being of recent origin and definitely not a fundamental right enshrined in the due process clause. Both judges used the historical reason as a reason to say that it's not fundamental right. They basically said that this trend towards recognizing same-sex marriage is a new phenomenon. It's not a traditional right, it's not a fundamental right, and therefore it's not protected. Now, Lawrence in Texas is a case that outlawed, Lawrence attended a case that made unconstitutional, that stated that laws that made sodomy between two men in private an offense is unconstitutional.
You mean sodomy?
Sodomy.
Unconstitutional. Both between two men. Sodomy in general.
Yeah. This is the law. This is the case that struck out that law. Okay, and Justice Garfield had to distinguish how come the court could strike out that law and not this one. So what Justice Garfield said was that in that case, the state was intruding into private matters, and therefore the courts cannot do that. And that was a fundamental right for parties to choose to be intimate with whoever they want, any sex. And they said that was a fundamental right that was preserved and enshrined in the Constitution, and therefore it was struck out. In this case, what the judge is saying is that the plaintiff is asking for a state-conferred benefit, and the right to marry someone of the same sex is not a fundamental right. Then Justice Garfield moved on to the equal protection review. Again, he went through the various scrutiny levels, and he was of the view that no strict scrutiny is required. And then the question again is whether heightened scrutiny is required on rational basis scrutiny. Now again, he used the reasoning that both genders are treated equally. Everybody can marry someone of the opposite sex. And therefore, nobody can marry someone of the same sex. It is not discriminatory based on gender, and therefore under rational basis scrutiny, which is an extremely deferential standard of review, plaintiffs cannot prevail unless they can establish